He earned Nobel Prize in Literature in 1953. Why is he so famous? Churchill is best known for leading Britain during the Second World War. When Nazi Germany threatened Europe in 1940, he became the Prime Minister and inspired the British people through powerful speeches and determined leadership. His speeches were very famous. As a writer, Churchill wrote many books on history and politics, including the Second World War, a history of the English-speaking peoples. His personal life. Churchill was married to Clementine Churchill for 57 years. He enjoyed painting, writing, gardening, bricklaying, and caring for animals at his country home in Chartwell. His legacy. Churchill is remembered as one of the most influential leaders of the 20th century. In Britain, he is celebrated for his wartime leadership, while debates continue about his views on empire and colonial policy, particularly regarding India and Bengal famine of 1943. One of his most famous statements was, "Success is not final, failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts." It's actually a lesson which should be learned by everybody. His life combined politics, war, literature, and public service on an extraordinary scale. Here, one thing we have to understand is that it seems like here one thing we have to understand is that it seems like we are beginning a thought. Here, one thing we have to understand is that Churchill was both a war leader and an imperialist. Then we could explore that idea in more detail. Yes, when discussing Winston Churchill, it is important to recognize that historical figures can be viewed from multiple perspectives. On one hand, Churchill is widely admired for his leadership during World War II. Many historians believe his determination and speeches helped Britain resist Nazi Germany at a critical moment. His speeches were so positive and so inspiring that British people believed him. And even though there was some failures in the war, he just replaced all those things through his speeches and powerful words. It is very rarely people can do that. On one hand, his leadership during the war, everybody admired. His determination was so great that he could convince Germany and other people that he is always winning. Sometimes at that time he was facing defeat. On the other hand, Churchill was also a strong defender of the British Empire. His views on colonialism and India have been heavily criticized, and his role in events such as the Bengal famine of 1943 remains the subject of historical debate. So, a balanced view is that Churchill was a remarkable wartime leader, a gifted writer and orator, a committed imperialist whose views and policies are controversial today. When we think about those things or study about Churchill, these are really controversial. History is often most useful when it allows us to hold these different aspects together rather than seeing a person as entirely heroic or entirely villainous. Churchill himself once remarked that history would judge him kindly because he intended to write much of it himself, a reflection of both his wit and his awareness of how historical important reputations are formed. If you take his relationship with India, Winston Churchill had a difficult and often contentious relationship with Indian nationalism. He never liked India to be free. Churchill actually had a very wavy relationship with India. Churchill believed strongly in the British Empire and opposed granting independence to India for much of his career. It was a selfishness, but still his mindset was like that. He argued that British rule helped maintain stability and unity in the subcontinent. A sort of misunderstanding, I should say, because holding a country together by force without allowing it to have its own freedom is not at all a good politician's or good statesman's attitude. The conflict with the Indian nationalists is actually a follow-up of his a follow-up of his spirit of not granting freedom. Churchill was a fierce critic of Mahatma Gandhi, who was fighting for the freedom of India and opposed many demands of the Indian National Congress. He viewed the independence movement as a threat to the British Empire, because we do not know how India could attack British Empire, but he believed in that. During World War II, India became a major base for the Allied war front. See, just imagine, India had to fight for another country. At the same time, many Indian leaders demanded independence. The resulting tensions led to events such as the Quit India movement, which is very famous. Bengal famine, which was actually a very, very, very critical time. The Bengal famine of 1943 remains the most controversial aspect of Churchill's relationship with India. Millions died from starvation, and disease. Historians continue to debate the extent to which Churchill's wartime policies contributed to the catastrophe, but many scholars criticize the British government's response as inadequate. Actually, it is so. After independence, the great period, India gained independence in 1947 under the leadership of Jawaharlal Nehru. Churchill opposed Indian independence and was deeply skeptical about the end of British rule in India. Very, very selfish attitude. Historical legacy. As a result, Churchill's reputation differs sharply between countries. In Britain, he is often remembered as the leader who helped defeat Nazi Germany. In India, he is frequently remembered as a defender of empire and a figure associated with opposition to independence and controversy over the Bengal famine. So in India, he was not at all considered a great figure, a benevolent figure, but in Britain, perhaps, he was known like that for some time. Understanding Churchill's relation with India requires considering both his role as a wartime leader and his commitment to preserving the British Empire. The next thing we have to understand is that amidst all these things or engagements, Churchill had many hobbies. Here are some of the hobbies of Winston Churchill. He was interested in painting. Churchill loved painting landscapes and gardens. He took up painting in Middle Ages and produced hundreds of paintings. And he was actually a prolific writer. He was a prolific writer of history, biography, and memoirs. His books earned him the 1953 Nobel Prize in Literature. Gardening. He was interested very much in gardening. At his country home, Chartwell, he spent time designing gardens, ponds, and landscapes. He had a very softer side. Bricklaying. One of his most unusual hobbies was bricklaying. He built walls and garden structures himself. He was in love with perhaps bricks, and that means he became a very famous bricklayer, building walls, building small ponds, etc. And he was a very, very voracious reader. Churchill was an avid reader, especially of history, military affairs, and biography. So these kinds of combinations, reading and other hobbies, made him a person very unique. His love for animals also was very famous. He enjoyed keeping dogs, cats, horses, birds, and fish at Chartwell, his house. Food, drink, and conversation Another combination. Churchill enjoyed long dinners, lively discussions, and entertaining guests. So he had a lot of guests around him whom he respected and whom he actually uh, gave much of his time for entertainment. Among all his um, among all his hobbies, some hobbies stood out. Stood out. Painting was probably his favorite because it helped him relax and escape the pressures of politics and war. After all these things, Winston Churchill died on 24th January 1965 in London at the age of 90. A very long life, very useful life, very satisfying life. Final illness. On 15th of January 1965, Churchill suffered a severe stroke. His health declined over the following days and he died at his home in London's Hyde Park Gate. He was so great a man whom England respected. He was given a state funeral. Churchill received a state funeral on 30th January 1965, one of the largest ever held in Britain for a private citizen. Imagine his reputation in England. Notable features included thousands of people lined up the streets of London to see his funeral. Representatives from more than 100 countries attended. His wide popularity throughout the world. His coffin was carried through London in a grand procession. After the ceremony, he was buried near his birthplace at St. Martin's Church. Historical significance of the life of Churchill. Churchill's death marked the end of an era. He had served as a soldier, writer, parliamentarian, and prime minister, and was best known for leading Britain through World War II. Many people around the world mourned his passing, seeing him as one of the most important political leaders of the 20th century. At the same time, debates about aspects of his legacy, especially regarding the British Empire and India, have continued long after his death. See, Churchill actually had a sort of relationship with India which made him both famous and notorious because he was dealing with a country, very large country, where he actually never wanted to give freedom for his own reasons. But finally, his wishes were not happening and it failed. But his hatred for India, or rather a kind of dislike for India continued till his death. So we cannot glorify him, but still we have to study him, how a person can hate a country and try to suppress it. So Churchill is not a very famous person as India is concerned, but still he had tremendous influence which changed India's way of life. But at the same time, India remained the same, India's culture remained the same, he could not change it. And Mahatma Gandhi was the person who gave freedom to India by his peculiar kind of satyagraha and other very, very determined attitude, and his decisions were very final. And Nehru was by his side to help him to implement his ideas. And this is Winston Churchill. Thank you very much for watching.